We've been in business just under 12 years now and intentionally focusing on systems probably for the last 6. And so it's just been slowly building out those systems of tracking. And as you build out a system, you get visibility here. That gives me deeper understanding, which means now I know that we should pay attention over here as well.
Well, very excited. We have a good time friend. I mean, Jeremy's been a friend for a long time, and we have Josh Scull on. So welcome, guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, Brad.
Excited to be part of the podcast.
Yeah,
Plus, for those watching video, you can see Jeremy has a mean mustache he's had forever, so it looks good, man.
Yeah, it's been, I guess, maybe about 13 years strong. So
as long as I've known you. So Jeremy is founder of Cottingham Ltd, and Josh Scull he's a partner in the business. And I mean, I'm trying to think how. I believe the first time it might have been at the Builder Show. I mean, it's been a long, long time, Jeremy. This is pre-COVID that you and I have known each other and been fans of your work on Instagram for so long. I know that we've been, at some point, we're going to have some projects together. Even though you're across the U.S., but I know you guys work all over. And something that's unique, I think what's important for this episode, I typically don't start off with like a background, but I think it's really important just from a scope of work to like let the audience know the diversity of product and scope of work and furnishings that you guys are creating, at Cottingham.
Yeah, I mean, we a long time ago, as we kind of continued to form out the company structure and our services for our clients, we were always getting good feedback. Whenever we do a project, we'd want to get feedback from our clients about what worked, what didn't work. And so we originally started as a GC firm that we did, some, millwork and custom cabinetry and stuff like that. So slowly morphed into cabinet shop and just kept on getting this feedback that, hey, be great if you know someone that does metalwork, be great if you did metalwork, which in my mind, it's like, what, why is this even, it seemed weird that it was like, well, we're a cabinet shop. Why would you even ask? But I also grew up, both my parents are art teachers, and just growing up, it was just like different mediums, right? You use different mediums to do different things. And so kind of thinking through it, I was like, wow, it's not that, it's still kind of the same process, right? We design it, we do samples and approvals, and, we're just constructing something. So partnered up with a friend of mine at the time to start doing some metalwork. And so we do full-scale architectural millwork and metalwork. We do stuff as small as like boutique one-off furniture pieces, all the way up to, multi-story staircases, doing work in woodworking, any type of veneers, hardwoods, paint finishes, lacquer finishes, and, metal side, steel, brass, bronze, stainless, aluminum, really just love to stretch out and just kind of whatever the client needs, kind of meet them where they are. Yep. One of our core values is to have fun. So we like doing projects that are fun. If it's the same old, we get, maybe it's the ADD in me, get a little bit bored pretty quick.
So let me ask you this. I mean, it's interesting because, my experience has been you have a great millwork company, great furniture company, cabinetry company, whatever it may be. There's always this element where I don't want to say they don't have the skill, but maybe it's equipment. Maybe it's, the craftsman in-house. I mean, there's just a lot of variables, right? If you're doing metalwork or maybe you're putting mirrors or glass, integrated, a lot of times that's outsourced because there's a lot of coordination. There's a lot of knowledge, as we mentioned, raw materials and, there's equipment, right? There's the manufacturing side that does take, some costs, right, into the company and growth. And so, it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to be full turnkey. It's one thing to see the growth. It's one thing to be able to afford the growth. Why take that venture when you have such a skill set in cabinetry to say, we're going to actually do some things that are very complicated from, shower surrounds to staircases to everything in between.
Yeah. I think really it comes down to the fact that it was just, I think there's a little bit of like just kind of the ignorance of it, right? It's when before you had kids, you're like, hey, let's have kids. It can't be that bad, And I've got 3 kids. Josh is 4. Like love my kids, but like you don't know what you don't know, so you just kind of go for it, right? And it's just kind of like, as you walk through that process, you understand the dynamics of it. There's aspects of what we do that we've gravitated more towards. There's stuff that we've said, hey, this really doesn't work for us.
Right.
The liability of it, the complexity of it, the dynamics of it. It's like we can't provide the best value, even in the metal fabrication aspect or the woodworking fabrication of aspect of it. So, I think it's just kind of a little bit of it's just kind of like you just kind of need to go for it. We were also small enough at the time when we were biting into that stuff where it wasn't like, this massive risk. We were doing smaller projects, so it kind of gave us that freedom to branch out in that without being like, well, we need to keep our core business locked in because we have all this overhead and all this structure and implementation. We were a little bit more tactical to take advantage of that and pivot on that.
Yeah, and honestly, Brad, we find that the integration of those materials together is kind of what sets us apart and is the benefit to the client. Like Jeremy said, we want to serve our clients best, and we found that when we own all of that, we can do the best job that we possibly can because we have in-house designers that can make sure that there's all the complexity that's taken out when you're meshing those materials together is eliminated. So I think that's the value that we bring, from a client standpoint.
Yeah.
And you mentioned in-house designers. I think that's a unique aspect because, years ago I had Randy Coffin on, and he's one of the top jewelers in town. And of course, they have their own designers that create their own jewelry, one of a kind, right? There's an art to it, right? And so for you guys, I would imagine that there's a lot of projects where there are high-end architects. I mean, just for what it's worth, I know at the end of the episode, everyone's gonna be able to follow you. You guys do exceptional work. I mean, the craftsmanship and work is unbelievable what you guys, put out into the market. I would imagine at that level, you are working with, interior design firms and architects.
Yeah.
How does that coordination work? Are they coming to you with ideas and then internally you're like, hey, we can build it this way? I mean, what's the coordination between your design team to the actual build design team that's on these projects?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's always the kicker, right? Is you have a vision, and even with high skilled, high level architects and designers, there's still some figuring out to do. I mean, there's a lot of vision that goes into these projects, and the stuff that we get to put our hands on, usually are unique pieces. So there's still some dynamic left over where there's some figuring out to do. There's levels to define still that aren't defined, and I think that's where our design department does an amazing job to fill that gap, because there still is a void there. There's still a void in between the stage of architectural set or a rendering from a designer
Or a napkin
and
sketch.
yeah, or a napkin sketch. Yeah, let's be truthful.
Yeah.
And some of these Pinterest inspirational images that come to us. So putting that into play and having it pan out correctly for shop drawings to be proper and things work out and to capture different things that are necessary. We do that really well, and there is that void still, and that's something that we're able to fill.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, we usually get ideas brought to us at, probably like the 70 to 80%, right? And what we usually do is really connect with the designer, the builder, the architect, whoever it is, and really clarify mostly the how, right? Because a lot of times the idea, conceptually, all these ideas are really great. Brad, you build amazing projects, and you can tell it like, hey, let's do this, and it's like, great, yes, let's do that. But there's a big but, on the tail end of that of like how. Where does that come from? How does it get built? How does it get fabricated? How does it get finished? Is that on site? Is it, in the shop? Is it, multi-trade? So we really lean into that with our design department, to help fill all those voids, because a lot of times, and coming from a background of doing, kind of broader construction, a lot of times you can kind of get myopic, whether it's, cabinetry or metalwork or something, and you're not accounting for the fact that, you have to integrate all these other trades and all these other dynamics in the space. So we love kind of like closing that gap.
Yeah. We've talked about thinking like GCs, and being that Jeremy and I both come from that world, We don't just, we're not just concerned about our project and how it finishes and, how, what the finished quality is like. It's how is this going to integrate? Is there anything that they're missing? How this ties into the wall, or how this, what the adjacent material might be, should this be, a fry reglet here, or, what have you. So like, we always do our best to see the whole picture. And, that means a lot to us.
Yeah.
I love that aspect because I've seen in my career, I mean, we've been fortunate to work with a wide variety of architects and designers, and some of them have different skill sets that cross over. Some of the high-end designers have studied architecture, they have team members who do architecture. So, there's a level of understanding of what it takes for us as a builder to execute. And some of them have had GC experience, worked for a GC. Being that both of you had contracting backgrounds, I'd imagine just from whether it's code compliance, whether it's, if you're building something for a fireplace around, and how heat, different codes, like that value proposition of having a good understanding of what maybe I'm dealing with, that's the value proposition you bring as, one of our vendors and suppliers.
Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. I mean, it's been invaluable. I mean, the fact that, even just the understanding and, even just the emotional connection of like, hey, I know what it takes to get to this part of the project already. Like I've done ground up builds, it's like to understand the dynamic of getting there, and like you're coming in kind of like mid or later in the job because we're more on all the finish ends, right? But knowing that, hey, and this is where we've been trying to partner with a lot of our clients a little bit better and create a deeper kind of communication channel. Is like, hey, let's engage on some of these conversations a little bit earlier and work on designing the whole space more holistically, instead of like engaging and kind of shoehorning something into an already set environment. Maybe there's a load point that needs to be added earlier on, so we're not reopening up a wall or redoing some steel or something like that. Maybe some wires or a driver needs to be chased for some accent lighting or LED lighting or something. And it's like, the more we can communicate and work with the client towards the actual end result. And Brad, you understand this, right? Like, you see the end result in your mind and the renderings and the drawing, but you go back downstream, 3 steps and 7 steps and 10 steps. And you're like, well, today we have to start for something that we're going to execute on, 11 months from now. And it kind of doesn't make sense unless you're able to see that full span.
Yeah.
And so that's been really helpful, even in house, for us to say, all right, well, maybe this is a large job, right? We have a staircase coming up, that, it's like, hey, we have the actual structural component of it that needs to install very early on. And then we have the skin cladding component of it, and understanding how to communicate and coordinate that into a 2-stage job versus being like, well, now it's time to build the stair. And it's like, well, you're too late. We don't have access. We're going to have to remove a window to crane this in, so it really helps us to even help our team execute better instead of, kind of the whole 2-step, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back kind of action.
Yeah, that's good.
From a business development side, I mean, you mentioned, of course, you're working with the design community of interior, or you have in-house design. From a lead generation, do you find this more architects reaching out, interior designers reaching out, builders? Kind of how's that demographic look?
Wow. I mean, it really seems to split itself pretty evenly. I mean, we tend to partner a lot with builders, but we do get a lot of the early onset, designers will reach out, and then they'll like kind of do the intro part of it. And then, our client ends up being the builder. But yeah, it's a variety. I would say now more than ever, it's becoming builder focused.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that. When I first came on about 4 years ago, it seemed to be like a little bit of everything. And honestly, we're trying to narrow down what that, what our client base looks like too, and partner with the people that kind of understand our vision and wanting to get in early and make sure that everything is, going together perfectly and appropriately. Because, you're talking about sight lines that got to be going together correctly. And windows that are going to be installed at some point through the project, and this stair set also needs to coordinate with it, depending upon how it's focused around the building. So it's there's just so much to be involved with, and the builder really understands that. But usually, the designer will engage us and hand us off, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we've done from a business development side too, pretty early on, and years and years and years ago, I had a small company and just solo gig, and it didn't go too well. So like when I reapproached starting a company again, I wanted to try to really clarify a vision about what we could do. And so early on, you're working towards that, but it's not it's not clear. It's not a high resolution image yet. But one of the things that I knew early on is, I wanted to do high level, high end work. And so I really started going out of my way to just find out who those people were. And initially it was just in the communities around where I lived. And so it was like, okay, well, who is doing this type of work? And then how do I connect and partner with them? So I did get a lot of, word of mouth reference, but I also was pretty proactive early on to say, well, I want to work with this specific type of people, this specific type of builder, designer, architect doing this type of work. And one of the things that we started doing probably about, maybe it was about 6 years ago.
About the wedge?
Yeah, the wedge, right?
Wedge.
So, essentially we have a short list of people that we say, hey, these are our ideal clients. Mm-hmm. And so the goal is to figure out how do you engage directly with them, right? So it's, through, social media, through direct connects through social media, through engagement through social media, through meet and greet events and all those different things, going to the builder show. Yeah. It's like, all right, if these people are doing the type of work we want to do, I could market to 10,000 people and maybe get them, or I could go straight to 10 and out of those 10 connect with one and create an opportunity. So that's kind of how we really started honing our client base, is just having that short list of people and companies and organizations that are doing that high level work, instead of kind of off of like the 80-20 principle, instead of just kind of casting a broad net, just being like, this is right where we want to go. Let's go right to that.
I do love the targeted approach. It's interesting because earlier in this conversation, you had even mentioned, Jeremy, you're like, there was an element of like the entrepreneurship angle that you're like, does this work for us? Can we do this product? Can we be profitable? I'm sure there's two parts to your business, and really any business, that there's the element of, what is my lane that I can be successful and be profitable and, service my client, right? And bring that value, as you mentioned. And the other part is, what's the ideal client that's searching for this? And, to be able to find that and take a more, sniper approach as opposed to a shotgun approach, especially for the level of product, that you're putting out in the market, it makes a lot more sense. You mentioned that, at some point in your company's history, right? Yeah, that word of mouth takes place, and reputation and, content and Instagram. I mean, you have elements now where you do have a resume and a brand and a, product that people are searching. But in the beginning, right, it's hard to get someone to bite, right? It's hard to, even as you're looking in your local market, what secrets, or how were you proactive? How were you targeted? How did you target specialized people? What made them open a door, say, you know what, Jeremy, you're a new company. Yeah, we're okay. We're going to, take a chance on you.
Well, I think that, I as I thought about it, and obviously there was plenty of like, hey, that didn't work. Let's try something else. There's plenty of that. But, the idea that, like, if you want to build a relationship, right, with anybody, just in general, right, it's going to start slow. It's going to start small, and being okay, don't despise humble beginnings, right? The idea that, like, hey, even though maybe we would love to do the full kitchen, let's see if we can just do a small vanity. Even though we'd love to do the staircase, let's see if we can just do a handrail for you. Low risk, low engagement. let's find a way to prove that we can, provide the drawings you need, the finished samples you need, the quality you need, the timing you need, because and Brad, you're doing high level projects, right? You have a high level project. There's a focal piece in that. It's a lot to be like, I'm going to hand this off to somebody that I've never worked with before.
Yeah, sure.
Even though they might have a good reputation, I've never worked with them before. I got two other people that I can hand this off to, and I'm confident that they can execute on it. Everybody's built out. If they're executing at a high level, they have their client pool. Yeah. They have their people that they connect with and they go to. And so I always thought of the idea of like kind of driving a wedge in, right? Like there's just that center point, right? So it's like, hey, just have the first conversation, right? Some type of connection, some type of engagement. And then, if it can be a longer conversation or a sit down or grab a drink. And one of the things for us, again, I referenced it earlier, is like one of our core values is to have fun. And that's around projects, partners, and people that work in house, right? So it's like, I want to also make sure that, maybe this company looks like a great company. They're doing amazing work, but I'm able to talk with this, owner or, project manager or something for a half an hour and be like, I would never want to do a project with this person. I don't want to hitch my cart to this person for the next 11 months,
We're looking for
so we really think about alignment, but the idea that like have that connection and engagement and then start small, right? Figure out how you can provide some good value, some good service. And if I want to be legit. So if we can, be worth the salt that we're saying we are, then somebody's going to want to give us more opportunity and more option. And so that's where we try to really be humble in that first engage. I mean, and throughout the whole process, but especially when you're first connecting, like, you got to start small, start humble, and, see where you can meet somebody. If it's not an ideal project that we would like, but it's the opportunity to work with a client that's amazing, then it's like, all right, well, let's start with that.
It's interesting. I think as you were sharing that, Jeremy, what's fascinating to me is even if you're starting with a small piece, I look at it for my business. The relation here is that when I finish a job, I'm going to job cost it, right? I really want to understand what did it take for me to execute this custom home, this project. Duration. I mean, it's definitely at a different scale, but the reality is I still have to understand my costs so that I know how to communicate that to a customer in the future, that I can control overhead and everything that goes into it. For you and Josh, as you're looking at your projects, there's an element to how do you balance staying true to your craftsmanship, with making your product accessible to a wider market. I mean, and maybe it's not a wider market, as you mentioned, because it's very targeted, right? Who you're going to be working with, but there's still an element to know what does it cost to do a dedicated vanity, to do a handrail, to do an entire kitchen. How have you, I don't want to say mastered, but how has that been, bettered over time? Just understanding your costs and labor and hours and material and raw finishes that go into executing the product you do.
Yeah. I mean, that's a kind of a loaded question for sure. I mean, we've been through trials of, what works for us and what doesn't. And even just, narrowing our focus with who does our estimating. Our team is really wonderful at what they do. But one thing that helped us as we progressed along, we realized we needed some insight was bringing on a fractional CFO. We're actually in his space right now. And that gave us visibility that we just hadn't had before, and he's like, your G&A is like so low. And we're like, what's that exactly? Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah.
So, he put some markers together for us that really helped us and aided us in, seeing what, the profit and loss is, and also just having that insight on cash flow. And, man, it was a instrumental part of us, not just bidding jobs, because we were bidding plenty, but bidding them well. That was the key. So, we can now audit a job, properly and see, what the numbers came back like. But we've definitely narrowed our ability to kind of hone in on what's worked for us. And I think that we have numbers that are, not only work for us, but are working for clients. We are not meant for everyone. That's for sure. Like you said, it is a bit of a narrow market, but for who we do present our numbers to, we feel like we put together not just the right number, but the right team, and then obviously we believe in our execution as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say too, I mean, early on, right, you constantly have this major dynamic when you're running a company, right? You have the actual operations, the execution of the company, and then you have managing and building the company, right? So all your systems and your personnel and your org chart, and early on, just coming from constructing stuff and fabricating and building, I ignored that so much. I just grew up in the trades doing the work, and I love building stuff. And fortunately, my brain has been able to kind of switch to move from like building physical things to building systems and the company. But I would say the thing I would always see well-run companies and hear about well-run companies and be able to see behind the curtain sometimes about operations and stuff. And it's like, okay, well, we need to do this. We need to work on that. And I think the biggest thing I would get a lot of frustration, a lot of, disappointment connected to be like, well, we're not here, we should be doing this, but it's just start to slowly implement systems to track some of that stuff.
Right.
Cause it's been, we've been in business just under 12 years now, and intentionally, focusing on systems probably for the last 6. And, it's just like, you can't bite everything off at one time. Right. So for us, just starting to track all of our costs, all of the hours, like you're saying, doing the job costing, going back and looking at it, keeping record of them. And then it gives you more visibility, a higher resolution of understanding about when you do a job that is similar, or a certain process, or this type of space, or a type of location, or whatever it could be. You have context for it at that point. So mostly everything we build is the prototype, right? We build the prototype and then we install it because it's all custom. So you have to find some type of reference point to reference back to have a starting point for it. And so it's just been slowly building out those systems of tracking. And as you build out a system, you get, for me, my experience has been, and bringing Josh on, is like, okay, well, now I get visibility here. That gives me deeper understanding, which means now I know that we should pay attention over here as well, right? Where I didn't even think this was a thing to pay attention to anymore, but now it's like, oh, well, if I understand this is actually the input metric that gives this output. But I had no visibility because I wasn't even looking at it at first. So just really kind of being patient with it as we were building them out to get that clarity.
Yeah. I mean, it's the old saying, you have to work, on the business, not always in it. And that can't be any more true than it is, man. It really is one of those things that you just realize it more and more, especially when you start to peel back and you realize you're working in it, and you're like, oh my God, I have to pump the brakes and let me go back to what I know, what is right. And Jeremy and I, we hang our hats on our core values and our behavioral values that we've established, and one of them again is continual learning, and that's just prioritizing time in our schedule, and we try to ram this down everybody's throats in the office too, and the guys that are on the shop floor is like, always educate yourself, always be in a position where you're willing to learn, seek the next step, and if there is a better way, or seek guidance from someone, or there's so much information out there now that if you really want to grow your business and serve people, and that's really what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to create a serving business. We have to continually prioritize time to learn.
Yeah.
I can really appreciate the entrepreneurship journey for both of you. And the reason I say that is because of course I can relate being an entrepreneur myself, but it's one of those things that, you hear the term, you need to work on your business. And most of us are like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, I don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, there's
Right.
a system side, but the reality is, to your point of having the fractional CFO, like, what are retained earnings, right? What is, how do I understand the profit and loss? How do I understand, the income statement and balance sheet, and how that, what does that mean to me in real life, as I'm working? And so, as the years in business progress, as you start to understand the financial aspect, as you start to understand, um, your manpower to go do templates and, travel, and then how that incorporates the building and equipment and leasing and, all the different depreciation you may have, like there's elements that just come with growth. I mean, it's just a matter of time as you're working on your business. And I think you mentioned, Josh, you came into the business 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Your
Yep.
partner, speak
Yeah.
to that partnership. I mean, Jeremy, you've been in business 10 years. Josh comes in, like, maybe walk through that relationship and why the partnership? How does that look on a day-to-day basis for both of you?
Yeah. I mean, the crazy part about it is that it started pretty organically. It's like, we were talking about how we do a book with our teams in the mornings, and being at our separate locations, and like, oh, that's really cool. What are you guys reviewing? And we went and got a beer together, and it was like, oh, this is great. We're vibing here, and things are coming together really nicely. But I mean, it wasn't until a couple meetings where we're like, maybe there's something going on here. And I didn't think that it was possible, but loving what Jeremy was doing at the time. I mean, it was such an attractive thing to do for sure. But really, and I tell people all the time, is like, what really hooked me was the mission statement, the core values, and the behavioral values. I mean, that was what made me really consider that. And like, wow, now I have to talk to my wife about this major transition here, going from one thing that felt very stable to something that was like unknown. And but that again, it ended up being character, more than anything else. Not, yes, we all want to build really cool things, and we have the ability to do that, but the character which he presented these things, and that being in such alignment with what I was about and what I was going through. I mean, that was the kind of thing that you just can't, you can't quite understand it in the moment. But when it really comes into play and you have to make a decision, you're like, this is the right move. This is the right move for me. This is the right move for my family.
Yeah.
This is the way that I can serve, the community around us better. All those things. So that was the defining moment for me to come on and make that transition. And it's been, a lot of challenges, obviously, Brad, like you can imagine, but we're very different people too, and that's something that's
Yeah.
probably amazing about the partnership, is that we balance each other really, really well,
Yeah.
but we also aren't afraid to challenge one another. So that's pretty critical for a partnership like this.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say, I as we were continuing to grow as a company, continuing to see more and more opportunity. My personality type, my tendency is to be, very, very driven. Um, you know, big goals, big agenda. Moving fast, and the I was starting to see more and more vulnerability connected to that, as the company was growing, and I knew that we had this need for systems and consistency and structure. And it was like, I can troubleshoot and I can build stuff and I can, engage and I can connect with people, for, bring in work and do business development, all this stuff. But the steady, controlled, what my personality would say, boring,
It's my world, man.
execution. It's like,
World.
whenever I step into those worlds, right?
Yeah.
Like, I die. I'm just like, oh gosh, like, what I have to, like,
Yeah.
reference this report again this week. Like, this is horrible. Like, how about we do something new? And so, as Josh and I were talking, we reference Enneagram for our team. We talk about understanding each other better so we can communicate better. We look at all these different kind of data points, but it was like understanding kind of his ethos and way of being and how he showed up and how he operated. I was like, man, which bothered me a lot, but it's like he legitimately is polar opposite to me. And even though I knew that like that would lead to lots of friction points, I knew that that's what I would actually need to that's what I would actually need to continue to grow the company. So
Yeah.
it's been really good. I mean, not without those friction points, which is like, hey, I want to go, and he says stop, and he thinks we should do something, and I'm like, I don't think that that's the right way. But that gives the needed contrast to the decision, instead of it being this kind of singular approach that creates a vulnerability. So it's been really, really good from that perspective.
Well, I love the dynamic. I mean, the reality is, to your point, Jeremy, I mean, it can be pretty lonely as an entrepreneur, right? The ups and downs. It could change every 5 minutes throughout the day. I mean, it's really tough to run any small business. And I don't want you guys to get into specifics as far as what the percentage is or cost to buy in or how but maybe speak to this aspect. When you have someone coming in, such as you, Josh, right into the company, I would imagine there's some sort of valuation done, right? And whether it's capital you bring in, whether it's sweat equity, how difficult was that discussion between you two? How did you come to agreement to say, okay, we're going to be partners, being that Jeremy has had the business for a while and I'm coming in? How did you work that aspect?
Yeah, it was a couple conversations for sure. I would say that I mentioned that I felt very stable where I was at, stable, but also to be honest, I was unhappy also. So there was already something kind of like working inside of me that was like ready for a transition. But I just felt like felt so comfortable where I was, even in that kind of discomfort, that I didn't think it was possible. And we continued to talk, and we, kind of shared vision and all that stuff. He took the approach of like, what about partnership? And, that really sat well with me and sat well with my wife, and led to the decision to go in this thing together, because I wasn't really looking necessarily just to get some sort of glory out of it, or like big dollar amounts or anything. I was looking for a bit of happiness. I mean, that might sound corny, but to restore some happiness in my life and some level of accomplishment, in loving what I was doing and enjoying the craft and the trade. So that was a massive consideration, with all of it. It took a couple iterations, but I mean, again, even like what it is now, it's just like bouncing back and forth. We had no ego in it, neither one of us. And, I felt like it was a pretty easy transition to make. And there hasn't been a whole lot of conflict or anything like that. It's just always like trying to improve. I mean, we both kind of have the mentality of like wanting to get after it and like doing the best job that we possibly can. We have a hard time saying no to people. That's one thing that we definitely share. That might be the hardest thing to do for either one of us. But I think that's part of the good thing about us, because we want to serve people. We don't want to say no. We want to do our best in anything that we do. So,
I'll say, even every time we interview anyone for coming on board in the team, alignment is huge for us.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Alignment is so typically we're sending out our mission, core values, all that stuff ahead of time, make sure that there's alignment there. But we also talk about the idea about like, I like to think about kind of like a team of horses, right? Pulling in a direction, and it's like, okay, we're all going in this direction, but even if you're going like that way a little bit, we're kind of still going in the same direction, but we're pulling against each other. And so, we had a lot of alignment even before we partnered up. But we also then brought in some people that were, really important in our lives, that knew us independently. Knew both of us, and we knew them, to just kind of like, is this
good?
Is this good? Right? Like, you have no horse in the race.
Would you advise
there's
this?
there's no, you're not getting some type of kickback or payment from the deal going through or not going through or nothing. It's just like, give brutal, honest feedback about whether you think this would be good. So we sought some advice there. We went through all the financials and all the disclosures and everything like that.
Yeah.
But really, it came down, when there was really good alignment, everything got really simple.
Yeah. Right.
And we talk about that with the people we bring on too, because it's like, hey, is this a 2-year stint for you? Is this like your passion that you want to do?
Yeah.
We always talk about, where do you see yourself in, 15 years, 20 years? What would you be doing if you could be doing anything? Because we want the people that we're working alongside of us, and that was the discussion for us partnering up, was like, whether we're doing this here or somewhere else, we're going to be doing the exact same thing, because this is what we want to do, right? So, we want to build cool stuff. We want to work with great teams. We want to work with great clients. We want to, be challenged, do things that are fun and engaging. So it's like, whether we're doing it here or somewhere else, this is what we do. So I don't have to, twist your arm or convince you or be like, hey, let's, talk about some type of incentive program to, like, rally you up. And,
Let's hook you.
9 months later, you're kind of fizzling out and you're like, well, we got fresh coffee and, whatever, it's like, the new shtick, it's like, no, we're doing this. So,
Right.
that became really important from that discussion, was like, there's alignment. So really it just came down to, hey, the details get worked out,
Right.
And you gotta have all the conversations about the unsexy, unfun, legal. You have to have all those conversations. It's better to have them up front than than there being issues down the road. But, again, when there was alignment, it got really simple.
Yeah. It's good.
I love that, because I mean, not just the partnership you're speaking to, but also the company culture you have. I mean, you mentioned that, one of your core values is have fun. And not just the bells and whistles, like you said, free coffee, free cereal. I mean, whatever it is, free nap time. I mean, who knows anymore, right? But there is an element of retention, right? And you
Yeah.
mentioned the alignment, getting along. First, that's ideal in any relationship, whether it's marriage or business partnerships, whatever. I mean, you have to be able to get along. You have to be aligned in the vision, even if you have different personalities and skill sets and attributes. But vetting your employees and each other to be aligned. I mean, how is maybe that element of having fun, of that alignment, how has that played a role in retention and company culture?
It allows us to both understand who we want and who we don't want, and when it's time to let someone go. It makes it a lot easier, for sure, because we realize that, not to use that kind of cliche, like, this isn't a good fit, but, like, sometimes that is the best answer, is like, this is not the right fit.
Yeah.
This is, we're moving, like Jeremy mentioned already, is like, we're moving in two different directions and we're trying to all pull in the same direction. So, to be able to get that kind of stuff out in the open early on, and, like he said, we send out, we'll send out our core values, behavior values, and our mission statement. If they find any kind of part of that to not align with their life, then, right there, then and there, we feel like that's the best service for both of us. So, we want to create people that really love what they do, that enjoy the service that they provide. And I think it's really important to find that out, right off the bat. And so we have weekly meetings, bi-weekly meetings now. We switch that, but we have weekly meetings with our teams. A Tuesday team talk, TTT, Brad. We provide breakfast for the group, and we go over some type of learning, whether it be a book or a podcast or whatever it might be. And we find that time to be valuable because we want everybody to have a voice in the company. And we want to grow and learn together. So even if there is conflict, there can be good conflict, and there can be resolution on the other side, or maybe there's not resolution, but at least it's good conflict. And we're educating each other about who we are. We're learning how to communicate in that discussion too, because we all communicate so differently. So we find that to be a really invaluable time with our team, and that's where that alignment comes in play. And trying to retain that employee is definitely a goal of ours. It's not easy to do always, but that is definitely a goal that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to, the idea that, we all have unique giftings and abilities, and it's just trying to find that match, right?
Yeah.
That uh, right fitment. Even some of the people within the company, literally, was it last year, right? Josh and I literally switched roles completely.
Yeah.
We've had multiple people within the company jump into different positions, and it's like, you're the right person. Your intentions are good. Your knowledge base is good. What if we moved you into here? What if we tried you with that? But the idea that, like, having that alignment in the mission and the goal and the purpose allows you to trust and build that trust. And again, like, the idea that, like, Josh and I were going to be doing this work no matter whether we did it together or separate. The same thing with the people on our team that we want to integrate into our team is, like, they're doing this work. So let's just create a beautiful environment for them to flourish in and do the work in a place where everybody's passionate about it, versus being like, well, let's try to, like, shoehorn something together. And part of the thing with that is, like, the idea that work's going to get difficult, right? We're doing complex jobs. We're doing high demand jobs. They're very integrated. Lots of attention to detail. Construction schedules are they're a trip. They are a trip. Ever evolving, ever changing.
Always, yeah.
And so it's like, all right, it's going to be difficult. But if I'm working along someone I care about, hey, that's cool. We're fighting in this together. If it's difficult and I don't like who I'm working with, man, that's really tough.
That's tough, man.
That's really tough.
Yeah,
So,
it's no fun.
that's where it's like, it helps us fulfill our commitments when we love who we're working with, when it does get tough, or we love what we're doing. And, it's like, hey, this is tough, but I love doing it. I'm going to get through it. So,
Yeah.
So what keeps you guys up at night right now from a stress perspective?
Man.
our new facility.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So we've
Come top of mind.
yeah. We've been leasing for a while our shop space, and it's been a journey to try to get our own space, and we finally have the right partner to help fund the job and get everything set up. And so we've just started the fit out of our new shop space in Camden, New Jersey, and that's just like, we've been having a great year. It's awesome, love it, lots of work, lots of opportunity, and then you just throw this big project on top, and you're like, cool,
Just more
more blessing, like more and more. So,
besides manufacturing, do you plan on making this like a showpiece, like showroom for you for like product display too?
So Camden, New Jersey is one of the it's either one or two. It keeps on trading of the worst cities in the country. And so, and just to be clear, we could pick where we want to be, and we want to be in Camden.
Yeah, we're intentional.
We're very intentional about being in Camden. We see the fact that, for what it's worth, we're a pretty decently run company, and that's an area in our region that needs a lot of help.
Yeah.
And if there isn't good businesses moving into there, in those areas and in those neighborhoods, they're just going to continue to be, they're going to continue to be, run down. And so we see that part of our mission is, like, being engaged in communities. And so that's been on our heart for a while. It's been pretty cool to see alignment even in that kind of purpose and mission. So we're stoked about it. We're excited to be engaged in that community, engaged in the neighborhood. Again, like, I love, the kind of like the juxtaposition of, like, we're doing some of the craziest projects in the world. I mean, that's saying a lot. Pat myself on
the world.
In the world, yeah. No, we're just doing, like, really amazing projects, in these really awesome properties and for great clients. And then we're in this very, troubled neighborhood, troubled city.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that as kind of like this direct conduit that we're like, hey, we can bring these resources directly into this area, this access, this exposure to opportunity and stuff like that. So
that being said,
yeah, that was like a big
roundabout. We have a showroom.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
likely.
Yeah.
Will we have a really kick-ass office? Yeah, we will. Will the facility be great?
Yeah.
It will. It'll be great.
Yeah.
We'll invite clients in because every once in a while, somebody will want to come see, the in-process part, and we'll make sure that we have a really safe facility because that's going to be pretty integral to bring people in.
Yeah.
But not so much a showroom.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that's totally understandable. What do you guys do for fun?
Oh, that's great.
Ooh. I do jujitsu, and I work on my farm. So yeah.
What's on the farm?
We have a small. We have some cattle. We have some beef cows, and we have some dairy cows. We have some pigs, some chickens. So, I figured I wasn't busy enough. I might as well.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
Tackles it all. He sure does.
Yeah, my wife and I were both very passionate about food and where our food comes from, and that's kind of been like, don't get chickens unless you want to get a lot of other craziness going on. Don't bake some sourdough unless you want chickens. So, but it's been cool. It's been a great journey having that space. So doing the farm, raising our own food. Getting my kids out there, getting them engaged in that. So, and then, trying not to get choked out at jujitsu, So.
Yeah.
Let me go relax by getting, bent into a pretzel for 2 hours straight. So, yeah.
What about you, Josh?
It's a good reference to understand how stressful business can be. Be like,
oh my goodness, yeah.
This is relaxing, getting crushed for 2 hours.
Well, business is painful, but you're not getting choked out. I mean, hopefully
this is true. This is true. I mean, at least hopefully not. So
yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah. I mean, I like to dabble in everything. I'm a master of none of it. I like to surf. I like to surf, but I rarely do it. I like to ride my motorcycle, but I rarely do it. But all these things bring some pleasure to my life for sure. I mean, I feel like a different person when I'm down the shore and at the beach. That saltwater air just does something for me. So I kind of come alive in that. And I have a Japanese van that drives on the beach down there, and I bring the whole fam down there. So 6 of us roll into a Japanese van and get all cozy with the Jeep Wranglers and the other trucks and just hang out. So it's a really nice setup. But yeah, I wouldn't say that I have anything that's as painful as Jeremy does as far as martial arts.
Farmer jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Farmer.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a new thing right there.
Yeah.
You just came up with something, Brad.
Yeah. So.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, as you know, I want to be respectful of you guys' time too. But Josh, I mean, I can relate. There's something about the ocean, about saltwater. Like I don't know. My kids give me a hard time because I could probably be in the ocean all day. It's just definitely I'd rather. People say beach or beach or mountains. I'm definitely a beach guy, no doubt. Not that I don't appreciate the mountains, but I'm definitely a beach guy. But
certainly.
Well, you guys have been phenomenal. I mean, just your business. I mean, for anyone listening, I want you to leave your handles and where they can find you because you guys do amazing work. As I mentioned, I mean, Jeremy, we probably go back, 8 years at least, probably 7, 8 years, from the Builder Show and different networking events. And anyways, you guys have done an incredible job. Just really appreciate all you're doing for the industry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. And
where do we find you?
I'll say real quick though, Brad, even early on as a company, hearing your stories, hearing you on the Modern Craftsman podcast and when you started the podcast, like having other people in the industry that are kind of showing behind the curtain because you see these companies that are doing amazing work and you think it's almost unobtainable and you're like, hey, like these are real people that are like actually executing this and seeing your story and hearing your story and seeing your progress and continue to follow along with you has been personally an encouragement too. So I want to thank you for that because that really has kind of been like, they've done it and they're doing this and like, we can do it and that works. It's like, why don't we try that? Why don't we work on this? Seeing, you've shown some of the stuff in your posts and stuff about, how you do your team meetings and breakout stuff and post-it boards all over the glass. And, so, it's like, it's really fun to see that. So I appreciate not only you having us on, but, what you do and how you run your company and operate. So thank you for that.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate you guys. So tell us where to find you before I let you go.
Yeah, sure. You can find us on Instagram at Cottingham.ltd. We also have our in-house furniture line. That's FF&E, and that's FF&E.ltd. So you can find us at both of those places on Instagram.
Yep.
And anything else?
Yeah, www.
All the W's.
Yeah. Do people do that anymore?
Cottingham.
I've never had to say the website.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, Cottingham.ltd
Yeah.
is the website. If you'd ever want to connect with us there.
Yep.
We have a connection link there if you have any questions or want to engage with us. So, or shoot us a DM on IG.
I'll be the one answering.
So, yeah.
Well, I can tell you, for anyone listening, go give them a follow. Go work with them. You guys do incredible work. So thanks, Jeremy, Josh, for coming on today. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Have a great one.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.